living their lives, and they will tell you that we are living our lives in a very boring fashion. Every day, if we are at home, we just take care of grandchildren, and then we do this, we do that just to pass the time. We have to struggle with our bodies. There is health concerns. Sometimes we feel neglected because our value is no more there in the house. And if we cannot take care of anyone, then people don't take care of us. These are all the complaints today that you hear. But Swayambhuva Manu was the oldest of the oldest persons. 71 yugas long his life was. So how old he must have been. But Prabhupada writes, he translates, although his life gradually came to an end, his long life, consisting of an entire Manvantara, was not spent in vain. Why? Because he only did this. He was always engaged in hearing. That's the first thing he did. Then contemplating. Second thing he did. Third, writing down. Prabhupada actually writes there, Manu was always hearing, contemplating, writing down, and chanting the pastimes of the Lord. If you go through the whole Bhagavatam, this writing down is a very unique activity. Prabhupada always encouraged his disciples to study. And in our society, we are always encouraged to study. We always take out our notebooks and we write and we learn shlokas. We learn about Bhagavatam. And there is evidence that many Manvataras ago, Manu was also doing the same thing. So the devotional service is a science. It starts with hearing about Krishna. The moment we have heard about Krishna, we must contemplate on what we have heard. I remember asking my Guru Maharaj this question, what is the difference between an advancing devotee and a struggling devotee? And he said the difference is only 5 minutes. The 5 minutes means the moment the class finishes, the struggling devotee immediately forgets what he has heard. And he goes on to have prasadam and talks about everything else. But the advancing devotee contemplates on what he has heard. And if he spends a little bit more time contemplating on what he has heard, then the Lord becomes fixed in the heart. That's why the word contemplation comes very often in Bhagavatam. Bhishma Dev became very great because while lying on the bed of arrows, he was merely contemplating on the pastimes of the Lord. That is why whatever he was thinking, it became feeling and it became willing. The longer our mind and our heart dwells on the pastimes of the Lord, the more fixed we become. The more quickly we dispense with the pastimes of the Lord and the philosophy of science and devotional service, the more quickly we come away from devotional service. That's why Manu is a very successful story in devotional service. He was hearing, he was contemplating, and after contemplating, before we forget, Manu was writing down. In other words, Manu had his own notes also. And this is what we should do. We should use all these notebooks that are available in material world and just keep writing. Every time we hear about Krishna, our daily study, whatever we find in Srila Prabhupada's purport that is inspiring, we should write down. Whatever that you write, you find practically, you will retain in memory. That's how we study for exams very often. In order to remember something, we would write notes. So instead of doing that for material energy, Manu did that for spiritual energy. So hearing, contemplating, writing down, and because he could hear the Lord's pastimes, he could contemplate on the Lord's pastimes, and finally he was writing down the Lord's pastimes, the result of that was he was actually chanting the pastimes of the Lord. This is an important point. And because he was doing that, he did not waste a single moment of his time. And Prabhupada says very nicely that because his life was not wasted, the last line of that purport, his life never became stale. It never became stale. So if we want to avoid a wasted life and a stale life, where we become bored and our mind is restless, the best way is hear about Krishna, contemplate about Krishna, write down notes about Krishna, and then after that, chant the pastimes of Krishna. So the conclusion of this verse is very important. Prabhupada writes here that Manu gave the law known as Samhita, Manu Samhita. These are the scientific ways of living. And that is why the Manus are considered very exalted devotees of the Lord. And because they were also empowered personalities, they show us how they should live and how we should live. The purpose of human life is not to waste time. And the moment we waste time, that time which is wasted can never be gained. You see in Bhagavatam, all the devotees of the Lord, they never wasted a single moment of their time. Whatever time they had in between, they would steal it for Krishna. Sometimes we say we have no time. But if time is the friend, if the time is Krishna, and Krishna says, I am time, then why will time elude devotees? Logically, that is not logical. If Krishna is time, and we are using our time for Krishna, then why would time not be our friend? This is important. Human life is not meant to be wasted. It is very nicely stated in pages of Bhagavatam that this world is dukkhalayam and ashashvatam. Krishna says it in Bhagavad Gita and it is confirmed in Bhagavatam. Dukkhalayam means in this place, no matter what you do, eventually the miseries will catch you. And no matter how much you retain something, because it is temporary, it must leave you. That is the nature of this world. Just like nature of fire is to burn, nature of water is to flow, the nature of this world is to cause us misery and anxiety. The moment we accept it, then we don't waste the time. When we expect that this world should not give us misery, then we are in trouble. Hiranyakashipu was falsely trying to put material solutions to the material problems of birth, death, old age and disease. He was trying to rule the planet based on material solutions. And Prahlad Maharaj says in 7th canto, 9th chapter, 19th verse, Dukkha-aushadam tadapi dukkha-matadiyayam. He says that those who try to find solutions which are material to the problems which are material, those material solutions eventually become worse and more problematic than the problem itself. This is an important point for us to remember. There's a very simple example, given in Shastras. There was one sadhu who wanted to walk up because he wanted to go up for a pilgrimage to see the form of Krishna on a hill. So as he was walking up, he was praying because it got a bit tiring. And he was thinking it would be nice, if I had some vehicle or if there was some horse or something, because it is a long walk up. So he was just praying in his heart. And then suddenly, just as he made a turn, he saw that there was a merchant coming down the road with a horse. So the merchant looks at the sadhu and says, Sadhu, you want the horse? Because I don't need the horse. So sadhu thought, this is very nice. I was just hoping for some transport to relieve my anxiety and tiredness, and now the good Lord has sent something. So he said, I don't mind taking the horse, but how much is it? Merchant said, no, you take it, it's for free. So he thought, this is a very nice arrangement. So he gets on the horse and he starts going up. Just maybe 10-15 minutes down the road, he realizes the horse has stopped. It's not moving. So he gets down and he looks at the horse very carefully. And he realizes that the horse is not male, it's female. And she is pregnant. And she's about to give birth. Now he realizes why the merchant gave him the horse. Because it was of no value to him. So at that moment, in a few minutes, the horse gave birth. The man, it's a female horse, it gave birth. And there was the baby. So now that he had given birth, the sadhu thought, horse keep moving because I need to go up for yatra. But the horse refused to move. So now the sadhu was thinking, how to get the horse to move so that I can go up and see the Lord. Then he thought for a while and suddenly he got intelligence. He thought, the horse is sitting here because of the baby. Mother doesn't want to move because child is sitting here. If I could carry the baby horse in front of the female horse, the mother horse, I'll get her to move. So he thought, let's try that. So he picks up the baby, walks in front of the horse, and true enough, the mother follows the baby. And like that, the sadhu became happy. And he walked all the way to the top. And then he realized, what did I do? In order to get the horse to move, I actually had to walk. And I had a burden to carry. But in the first place, when I came for this yatra, I had nothing to carry. Dukkha-aushadam tadapi dukkha-matadiyayam. In this material world, whatever solution you try to use to correct your problems without Krishna only adds to your problems. It never subtracts your problem. Hiranyakashipu never learned this, and that's why he was in difficulty. We have to accept that this nature of this world is temporary. And we should end by remembering this important verse. I think it is found in the 11th canto, 2nd chapter, 49th verse. When you have time, study the verse. It's a very important verse. It will convince us of the nature of this material world. Dehe prana manodiyamyo janma priyashut bayatasya kriche samsara dharme avimuyamanaha smrita hare bhagavata pradhanaha. So there Bhagavatam tells us, in this material world, this life, this material body, it is never free. Material body is subject to birth and death. No matter what you do with this body, it must be born, and when it's born, it must end. And in between, it must deteriorate. So that's the nature of this material body. Second, Bhagavatam tells us, this life air, prana, it may keep us alive, but it is always harassed by hunger and thirst. There is always going to be harassing us. Wherever we go, the primary harassment will be hunger and thirst. No one can fast forever. Even after this, we'll be thinking our prasadam is coming now, because our stomachs are all empty. So constantly this life air demands when you're hungry and you're thirsty. The mind, Bhagavatam tells us, its nature is that it's always anxious. The nature of the mind is, it will force you into anxiety even if you don't want to be anxious. If everything is perfect, the mind will find some trouble to say, hey, you should become anxious again. So there's never going to be a perfect time for the mind. Intelligence has another problem in this material world. Bhagavatam says, intelligence runs after that which cannot be obtained. Very nice point. We are always running after that which cannot be obtained. Hiranyakashipu thought he could obtain immortality, but he could not obtain. We think we can fulfill all our desires, but the more we try to fulfill our desires, the more dissatisfied we become. So there is misuse of intelligence. Then Bhagavatam tells us, all our senses, because they become exhausted with all this running around, eventually they also become materially tired, materially exhausted. So you see, all the elements of the material body eventually become exhausted. That is why when those who are old and without Krishna, they are very stale in their lives. But those like Manu, who are always hearing, contemplating, writing down, and then remembering or chanting the glories of the Lord, their life was never stale. They never wasted time. And that is why Manus are the order carriers. That's why they are the servants. And that's why they are praying to Krishna. So then how to come out of this material world? That is finally given in this verse. Samsara dharme avimuyamana. The devotee of the Lord is never bewildered by this material nature of the body. It's very important. Why are we not bewildered? We are not bewildered because we have accepted that this is the nature of the world. To try to change it is foolishness. We have to change our lifestyle in such a way that we take up devotional service. So a devotee then is smritya Hari. He is always engaged in Hari's remembrance. And because he is engaged in Hari's remembrance, Bhagavata Pradhana. He is always aloof from this and he is never bewildered. This is the royal road of devotional service. So remember what Prabhupada says. The best yogi is one who never wastes his time. In what? In what Hiranyakashipu was trying to do. Conquer material nature. Instead of conquering material nature, the devotee performs sincere devotional service. And because of his sincere devotional service, he actually conquers Krishna's heart. And that conquering is much better. Because in such a conquerance, he becomes humble, he becomes the servant of the servant, and he becomes truly peaceful and truly blissful. Jai Guru Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Ananta Guru Vaishnava ki Jai. Are there any questions, comments, realizations? Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhupada said that our temples should be Varnashram universities.
Jai.
What did he mean by that, according to your understanding?
Yeah. I read this in Sikshamrita also. Prabhupada says that temples should be universities for Varnashram. From what I understand, Prabhupada wanted a temple to be a community of devotees. He wanted the temple to be the ideal place where brahmacharis, grahastas, retired householders, vanaprasthas and sannyasis would actually be able to perform their duties respectively in a community and yet always have the opportunity to congregate for the pleasure of the Lord. So in each in each function, the brahmacharis would perform their functions, the vanaprasthas, the sannyasis, the householders. If they were all peacefully cooperating, and if they were all acting according to their varnas and their ashrams, then the temple community would prosper. And Prabhupada then said it would become a model, a small microcosm of how the rest of society would become. So that's why Prabhupada envisaged that the temple is not just the monopoly of one particular varna or one particular ashram, that it should be a cooperative effort of all devotees. Sometimes in the beginning years, when some of the brahmacharis felt a bit agitated because women were also there, I remember reading that Prabhupada wrote to them and said, well, if they are agitated because women are coming to a temple, they should go to the forest. So he said that, meaning to say that everyone had a right to cooperatively exist peacefully, as long as they maintain their standards and maintain the orders and rules and regulations of their ashram. But if they disrupted their own ashrams, then it would not be a university. It would become chaotic. So actually Prabhupada didn't just envision the fields or a farm community as one example of varnashrama dharma. What you say is correct. He actually envisioned the temple as a starting point of varnashrama dharma. Sometimes the misconception we have in our society is that varnashrama dharma is a concept that is very difficult to put into practice. When we follow Prabhupada's instruction the way he put it down, then every temple becomes a very good place because grihasthas are cooperating, the vanaprasthas are cooperating, the sannyasis are giving us nourishment, the brahmacharis are keeping the spiritual standards, and eventually the entire community is enlightened. So that's my understanding. Yeah. Nice point.
I like this point that it's not something that is difficult to apply, because there's sometimes an understanding, which I think is a misunderstanding, that it's not something that we are transcendental to an ashram. I think that's wrong. And some say that we cannot introduce it. We are too much in Kali Yuga like that.
Yes.
So I appreciate that. I think it's.
Yes, I agree. Because that misconception is very widely spoken of very often, and very often is dismissed because they say it's Kali Yuga, it's gone. But if we really study Prabhupada's instructions on how we should live, then we find actually that we have unnecessarily complicated the matters. Prabhupada made it very simple. If you are in a householder ashram, behave as a householder. If you are brahmachari, behave as brahmachari. If we follow the codes of behavior given in Samhitas, then varnashrama dharma actually comes into existence without separate endeavor.
So Prabhupada, he wouldn't, I mean, every third purport in the Bhagavata, and Prabhupada writes about varnashrama.
Exactly.
So
yes.
I mean,
so why would it be impossible?
I mean, if it was something impossible, not relevant for us, why would Prabhupada spend so much space discussing it? So it's obvious it's a very important topic.
Yes, it is.
Jay.
Thank you. Yes.
I was just wondering in terms of preaching. The other day we had a program out on the lawn, and you were narrating this very wonderful story from the 8th canto, all these incarnations and like this.
Churning of the milk ocean.
Yeah, churning of the milk ocean, exactly. And I was just, every time like some Danish person walked by, I was kind of like thinking, they will consider this quite far out, like Gaura lifting the universe on his finger, or so many things. So I was just, sometimes when we are like preaching and introducing people to the philosophy, I'm just thinking how far one can go with, like, for example, Bhagavatam is like to the Western standard, it's very far out, but still there are so many nice points there. So how to introduce it properly to people?
Actually, Prabhu, all the principles in Bhagavatam are very practical. And if we introduce the practical aspects of Bhagavatam, which is everywhere, like for example in this verse, we come to understand the nature of the Manus, thinking of the Manus, and then we relate it to the way we lived, there is a very good starting point for preaching to the general populace. People in society want to know how to live in such a way that they become peaceful. Actually, everybody wants that. Every person, whether from Denmark or anywhere in the world, he has only one objective in life, and he wants to become happy. He just wants it in a different way. But ultimately, when you ask him, why do you want this, he will come to the point which is the same with the other person at the other end of the planet. Everyone wants to become happy. Only two kinds of people, Shastras tell us, don't want to be happy. One is a madman and one is a dead man. Dead man cannot be happy and madman doesn't know what happiness is. So we should have faith first that everyone is searching for happiness. But the beauty of Bhagavatam is, Bhagavatam doesn't just speak about happiness after this life. Bhagavatam guarantees that there is happiness in this life. And that is what is really appealing to many people. Very often when we preach in universities and we preach to, I'll give you a personal example. For example, I teach at a French business school, a master's degree in Asian societies. And one of the topics that I have to teach is ethics and values. And when you take the principles of Bhagavatam and give the principles of ethics given by Bhagavatam, the way to live peacefully, the way to become free of anger, envy, illusion, which are all outlined in Bhagavatam, you find that even if people don't even understand the concept of God, when they hear the commonsensical way in which Bhagavatam is presented, they become very enlightened, they become very happy, and they understand that this is universal. For example, in the churning of the milk ocean, Krishna's advice to the Devatas was, be peaceful and patient when you endeavor. Do not become angry and agitated. And he said, in anger and agitation, nothing is obtained. But in peace and patience, everything is obtained. If you start your preaching with that point, and you illustrate with examples, in fact, even the person who is walking on the street, who is new to this, if he contemplates on this point of fact, he will realize, actually it's true. Every time I have been peaceful and patient, I find that things have been achieved. But every time I become angry and agitated, I find that things have become more frustrating. So the way is to present a philosophy, which is very commonsensical, because it touches everyone's heart. Bhagavatam is for everyone. And then, once they have an understanding and they are convinced that Bhagavatam philosophy is really the philosophy in which to live our life, then with Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, we can illustrate these philosophies by giving them the pastimes of the Lord. And one other thing, Prabhu, is very helpful, is the devotee who is transmitting this to the person. If he has implicit faith in what he is preaching, then purity being the force, Krishna will give the other person who is hearing, Krishna was also in his heart, he will give him the understanding to understand what the preacher is speaking. Because the preacher is 100% convinced that this knowledge is transcendental. If only we are convinced, can we convince others? And in that way, you will find that many persons who may believe this is far out, in the beginning, they will begin to understand that actually it may sound far out, but the principles are very, very nice. And they will start to relish it. That is our experience. And that's why we find that all these scriptures, they just are able to touch people's hearts, because by nature, they are coming directly from Krishna. And because purity is the force, even that which appears impossible can eventually become possible. Krishna is Yogeshwar. If he wants, he can make the sun set in the east and rise in the west. It's really up to him. He's Yogeshwar. If you want to distribute books and you keep in mind Krishna is Yogeshwar, today he can do a miracle. And he can make every single person who come take a book. Because he's Yogeshwar. And because we are connected to him in disciplic succession, we are also partaking of his potency. A devotee who has that strong foundational faith, he can present any far-out concept in Bhagavatam. Like Prabhupada was presenting Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita and Bhagavad Gita to persons who were completely new to it. Because purity is the force, it actually worked. So we should take his example. We should pray humbly at the lotus feet of our acharyas, and they will give us great faith and potency. I hope that's useful.
Very much, thank you. Thank you.
Mataji, you had one question. Maybe we'll take the last one, Prabhu, and then we can. You have a question?
Yeah, it was also about this Varnashama Dharma implemented in our Eastern society, because I have many friends who, first of all, we generally preach that marriage life is full of suffering, you know, and that scares, I think, a lot of devotees to even dare to enter the...
Actually, do we preach that?
Yeah, we have preached that for some years, and every single Bhagavatam class has been for years about this point, pitfalls and danger in married life. But my question is that according to Varnashama Dharma, that everybody should be properly situated, because it's difficult sometimes even for a man, a male devotee, to get a proper job, according to his skills and abilities and like this. And in Kali Yuga everything is so topsy-turvy that we see sometimes even the wife has to work and the husband stays at home, and it's just like unlimited topsy-turvy. So how do we, because then what is this transcendental Varnashama Dharma, and just do the needful, because we are also in a small temple where sometimes you just do whatever you want. Sometimes you have to do 4 different things.
Yes. See, the concept of Varnashama Dharma is not contradictory to what you said. Varnashama Dharma simply means, Mataji, that we all have different inclinations in our hearts. And according to the orders of Varnas and Ashramas, we fit into these inclinations. That is there. However, there will always be a time, because we are in Kali Yuga, where we will have to understand that by the nature of the age in which we live ourselves, nothing is absolutely going to be perfect. Srila Prabhupada understood that perfectly. And that's why he believed strongly, against the background of Shastra, that if each person were to perform his duty according to his varna at that given point of time, that did not preclude that he would not be able to wear different hats, even at the point when he was doing a particular varna. Prabhupada displayed that in his own life. Even as a householder, he was also struggling. And even as a vanaprastha, he was also struggling. But the material struggles continued, but never did he move away from what his varna or ashram was at that point of time. So we may have to handle and multitask and do so many things, but we should not forget that because we are in a temple, our activities, because they are done for the pleasure of the Lord, ultimately they will please Krishna. And Krishna knows what an imperfect age we live in. If we have to perform so many different duties, or if we have to accept that in this age everything is deteriorating, then the devotee should not find that to be a contradiction in the principle of Varnashama Dharma. Because the main principle of Varnashama Dharma is that we cooperate according to our different capacities, different vocations, and the cooperation is with Krishna in the center. That is the fundamental aspect of Varnashama Dharma. It may not be as perfectly placed as it should be, but then the question Prabhupada always asks is, what in this world is perfect? Sukracharya was so critical of Vamandev because he did not want his disciple, Bali, to actually serve Vamandev. Finally, when Sukracharya found that Vamandev was the Supreme Personality of Godhead and Bali had surrendered to him, Vamandev turns around in the 8th canto and he asks Sukracharya, have you anything to say now? And Sukracharya says a very important point, which is important for us to appreciate Varnashama Dharma. He says, Mantratas tantratas chidra, desha kalartha vastutaha, sarva karoti nishchidram, tava anusankirtana tava. It's a very important verse. He says there, my dear Lord, now Sukracharya is praying to Krishna as Vamandev. He says, my dear Lord, this is what I have understood. One may not be perfect in chanting mantras. One may not be perfect in performing tantras, different sacrifices. There may be a lot of discrepancies in the place we stay, in the time we are in the kind of paraphernalia that we have. All these will be full of discrepancies. However, he says something very nice. As soon as your Lordship's names are chanted, all discrepancies will go and everything becomes faultless. So we have to balance. Varnashama Dharma is a standard. At the same time, Krishna says every endeavor in this material world will be covered by fault. That is going to be there. Then you put this verse now next to these 2 points, and we understand that the overriding principle is the sincere attempt of the devotee to constantly put devotional service in the center while struggling